You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing listeners. I am so excited to have you join me today because I've got an amazing guest, amazing woman that is going to join us and this conversation and enlighten the heck out of you. I'm really excited about this conversation, Darcy. So Darcy, I'm going to let her introduce herself and what she does and why I have her here. But okay, I'm getting emotional. I was not planning on this. All right, here we go. Real Amie. So I was thinking about how to introduce you, and I told you that just a minute ago. I was like, is it okay if I just say that we worked together and that you were one of my women that I have just fallen in love with and adore? And I think that's why I'm getting emotional, because watching you on your journey has just been incredible. Remembering like from the first time we met, and I do this with all my women where they come in and it's just like, help, there's so much confusion and what do we do? And I need to be listened to, support. And having gone through so much of my own pain and journey, it is so easy for me to just get in the trenches and want to just sit right next to my women. And I have just loved your journey, watching you. I know that I can, every once in a while, will go in and sit with you in the trenches, but most of the time it was just standing back, sitting alongside you, but watching you just go and thrive and move and do the work. That's really what always stands out to me over the years when I've had clients. Not everybody is willing and ready to do the work. I think you probably see that with what you do now, watching women who come and want to find answers, but it is not easy to find answers to healing. It is not easy to find answers sometimes to these questions that our body has, not only our mind, but our body. But you are a prime example of a woman that has been so determined to find answers and to figure it out, to keep going and putting one foot in front of the other, sometimes 1 minute at a time, right? And yet you've done it. And now you are doing incredible things. So now I'm going to let you just talk about what you have developed, what you do, how you help women too.
Thanks for getting me all emotional.
Sorry, I know. I wasn't planning on that, but
no, when you reached out to me, my heart just like was so excited. You just have such a special place in my life. And it's been a little while since we've connected. So it's so fun to be back with you and see your face. And yeah, when I came to Amie, gosh, it's been over 2 years now. I came to Amie looking for a divorce coach. So I was really, really ready at that point, and I knew I needed help. And anyway, miracles happened that I was not expecting or wanting, honestly. And my husband and I ended up figuring it out, and we're incredibly happy. So I am still married, but I've been there for sure and was on that path. But to what you said, Amie, that this work is holy crap hard. And so, I mean, what I do is the physical side of it, right? I was an RN, I don't know, on sabbatical for many years, I guess you could say, while I was raising my kids. And then when all this went down with my relationship, and I realized like, okay, I need to figure out a way to provide for myself and my kids. And so during that summer, when my husband and I were separated, I was trying all sorts of silly things to make money, and it was scary, super scary. And I'm making pennies and stressed and working hard, and yet having to do all this trauma work at the same time. Like, it's a lot to hold and carry. And I would say everything else went by the wayside. There was not space for anything besides survival. And so I understand that feeling completely. But as my relationship started to heal, and I had been through a lot of health challenges over the years, and had just climaxed during that year where I was going through all this trauma, I discovered functional medicine and was just blown away, like finally getting answers to my why, like what's at the root of what's happening to me, and discovered and knew I could feel it as I was going through the healing work with Amie, working on my trauma. I felt changes in my physical body, that progress that I'd never been able to make before on my own, just trying to do all the physical stuff. And so that's what I love about functional medicine, is it brings in all the roots, including emotional, mental, trauma healing. Like that is a piece of it. And
Mhm.
and so is the gut, and so are the adrenals, and so is blood sugar and all those things.
Yeah.
So that was just such a beautiful gift and discovery for me. And then I utilized my nursing degree to go back to school. And even though I was back with my husband at the time and I probably didn't need to worry financially any, but I just was like, I want this for me. I think that's like such a huge message I have too. And this
Mhm.
beautiful quote from Gabor Mate, he says, the exercise of agency is powerfully healing. I'd been so many years never choosing for myself, just keeping the peace, survival mode. And now it was like, I want to choose me, what I want to do. I want to have a business. I want to coach and help women. I want to make money. I want to use my voice that's been shut down for so many years. And so
Yeah.
I went back to school, started seeing clients right away. Like it's just been incredible. So I'm a functional nutritionist now. I've completed my certification and I have my own clinic online. And I specifically lately have like to dial down my focus to women that are my age, that are age 35 to 55, that are going through the transition of perimenopause, having big hormonal shifts and challenges there physically, and knowing that like this age and stage is really common for increased stressors. And we don't have the same resiliency to stress that we did in our 20s. So there's just so much we can do at this age and stage. So that's me. That's what I'm doing.
I love it. I love everything that you said right there, and especially about the agency and being a chooser and having your voice. That's my language. It's my love language. I love those words. And just, yeah, again, watching you do that has been just equally inspiring to me. And I know to so many women that you work with. So something you just said right there that I think just to start us off, how our bodies handle stress. And when we are past that 35-year-old mark, which most of my listeners are, I know I do have some that are younger and some that are way past that 55, 60 mark too. So I've got a wide range, but the majority of you fall into this space. I thought it would be helpful to have Darcy come on and talk about this, but how the body responds to stress just in general, in a normal, healthy way, how our body was designed to handle stress. But when you have, and designed to handle the change, as we call it, right? The change into menopause. But when you have trauma on top of that, it absolutely impacts the way that you go through the change. Can you just talk about what you've discovered there around
Yeah,
trauma and menopause and how confusing that can be?
for sure. Well, they both bring a lot of symptoms along with it. And it's like, how do I distinguish what's what? And I mean, my message mostly is like, it's both, it's all connected, but our bodies are so miraculous. We are created to be able to handle stressors and then like move past and get back to normal and be able to go on and produce hormones and do all the things and digest that our body's meant to do. And the modern world that we live in and the kind of circumstances that we're put in, especially women that here are listening to your podcast, we find ourselves in a chronic state of stress, which is just like constantly calling on the adrenals, constantly raising cortisol, which is raising our blood sugar. It's creating inflammation. It's burning through our electrolytes. It's breaking down our muscle. It's very um, destructive, really. And as we age, our resiliency hormone, or DHEA, is our resiliency hormone. It's like that counterbalance to a high cortisol. It's there for us and it helps us to manage those stressful times, even chronic stress. But as we age, our DHEA levels and so as we age and we're faced with these similar stressors and chronic stress, our ability to handle those stressors isn't there like it was before. But at the same time, as we go through perimenopause, which if you don't know what that means, that's the years leading up to menopause. When it can to 10 years long that women are going through this transition.
I
And
didn't know that. I was actually quite pissed when I thought that. I was like, what? But yeah,
yeah,
if so many women probably don't realize that.
yeah, I was a little overwhelmed when I learned that the first time too. It's like, wait, what? I thought it
Right?
was just a year, like all of a sudden you're done. But no.
So not
And
only
some
does your
it's short.
DHEA drop, but everything else starts dropping south too. So apparently that's just the
Yeah.
when my
Yeah.
mood started to drop, so did my DHEA.
I know they were missing out on that estrogen to help perk us up.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, I mean, our estrogen is incredible and it's
Mhm.
so good for us. Just so many incredible things. And I call it reverse puberty because in puberty, we start producing estrogen, but our bodies are taking forever to like get it stabilized. So it's like picking up and then down. It's like this huge roller coaster. And then during our childbearing years, it's fairly stable. Then when we start going through menopause, our estrogen starts doing this again. And it's like really, really high. And then it drops really low. And that's when we're like having hot flashes. And then it goes up high and our boobs hurt. And we're like having huge emotional mood swings. And so, yeah, like it makes sense why, like, how do we tell if this is trauma or is it my wildly swinging hormones? But really, I guess my message is that if we're not taking care of the trauma piece, our adrenals and our nervous system is already like worn down, being called upon constantly. And then to add to that wildly swinging estrogen, which is a stressor on the body as well. And the way that our body treats that is by just like sucking in, trying to like save resources, like dialing down our metabolism so that we're like reserving resources. So
That
we,
catabolic energy. It's like, let's just, yeah, up the cortisol, suck in any energy that we can get from any part of us. And it's so exhausting and draining.
yeah. And it
Like
leaves you just
tearing
like,
down.
so I don't know your question. I don't know if I, but that's,
Well, okay. So here's a follow up. So what you just said right there of like, we've got to treat the trauma. This is where I have been, because I've has been working with a functional medicine doctor for years and years. I just got a new one and we have made massive progress, more than I ever have in the last 6 years. Just this last 6 months, we have made so much progress. We're finding some of these pieces. But what you said right there, I think is really an important message, at least that I have, is I feel like my body, once I put these little pieces together that we finally found were missing for me around the physiological part of my body, my doctor was like, who is fairly trauma informed, but he was like, your body responded so fast to these more than most women. He goes, I really believe it's because of all the years that you have been doing to release the shock residue in your body and work on creating safety in your body. And when he said that word, like that's another like hot word for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense to me that a lot of these women are still not feeling that sense of safety. They haven't created that sense of safety in their body. And so the reason that stood out to me, I'm like, well, that makes sense because your cortisol is going to still be pumping high if you don't feel safe. If you're still in fight, flight, freeze, then you can't regulate. It doesn't matter how many freaking pills you take. And you would die if you knew how many supplements that I would take a morning, like 2 handfuls. And my doctor was like, what are we doing? And anyways, like that's a whole other topic. But once you get that felt sense of safety and stabilization, then I think that's when you can really find what is really going on physiologically with your hormones, with progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, like all of the things, cortisol. Then when you do, at least this is just my experience, and then I'm going to have you fill in the gaps. But when I did start to calm that down and then add the pieces that were missing, right? The nutrients that were missing, I needed more testosterone, I needed more progesterone. My body was like it just sucked it up and it was like, thank you, boom. And then it made my body do exactly what it was supposed to be doing this whole dang time. Does that make sense to you? Because like sharing what I experienced there.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, that sending signals of safety is such a foundational piece of my work. And if the body's not feeling safe, it's not going to move on to other phases of healing. It's going to be in that fight flight mode and unwilling because it's in survival mode. It's trying to shut things down enough and conserve energy to do the work that's being asked of it through the stress response. And so,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So tell me then, what does when someone is in a stuck, and I'm going to say stuck because we're going to have a fight, flight, freeze response. I mean, that's part of being human. But what you were saying in the very beginning in your experience, like survival mode, when you are living in that space far longer than intended, what does that do to just our hormones? Just estrogen, progesterone, testosterone.
Well, so the way I like to think of it is if there's like a famine, a drought, let's say we were living 1,000 years ago, right? And there's no food available and there's war going on or there's predators outside the cave or whatever it's happening, right? Your body's going to be in a stress response, and that signals the brain. The brain knows this. Our limbic system is aware of what's going on and the dangers, right? And so it it is not going to send the signals to our ovaries to be like, yeah, go ahead and ovulate because everything's good. Let's have a baby, right? It's going to be like, no, it is not safe to procreate. It's not safe to bring a baby into the world. Like, now is a time to protect and survive. And so when that happens today, like, we're not facing starvation necessarily, right? Or we're not at war, but it is the same in our body when we're going through this chronic stress response. And so the brain knows it's not safe to do what our bodies are supposed to do every month, whether we want to have a baby or not, right? But having that normal cyclical hormone response is healthy and good for us. And when it's not safe, that won't happen because our brain is sending the signal to shut it down. So when we're in that stress response, our reproduction shuts down, our digestion shuts down. And alongside of that, like, our thyroid dials down, our metabolism dials down. And and so yeah, that it's when we start sending those signals of safety that, okay, it's time to do all those things that are done in times of prosperity and safety, which is reproduce and heal and digest our dinner. When we're running from a lion, there's no time for that.
Right. Gosh, that makes so much sense to me, and I feel like I literally lived that. I was so enthralled. I had a question and then I just lost it. You were saying? Oh, okay. So what sorry, let me back up. Okay, so living in survival mode long term. So that's what happens when we go through a trauma response. But long term effects, what have you seen doing this with women who have been in this space of like long term survival, chronic PTSD? How, like, I guess I want them to relate where you can say, yeah, this is some of the symptoms that I've seen, some of the ways that this presents so that they can go, oh my gosh, like that might be me. Anything like that you can share relatable to prolonged symptoms?
Yeah, for sure. And we can start with the hormone side of it. You may have like irregular periods or periods that aren't showing up at all or really heavy. You might experience like estrogen dominant symptoms because when we're not having regular ovulation, when our body's not having that regular cycle, we don't have the progesterone, like you were talking about, to balance out the estrogen. And so you might have like really bad breast tenderness or really extreme mood swings leading up to your period. You might have even to the extent of like PMDD, which is like a pretty severe depression. You could be experiencing a lot of pain, weight gain. I mean, that's all on the hormone side of it. What I've really seen a lot is with issues with the gut. Like I said, that when we're not in safety, like, we are not digesting our food like we should be. We're not producing those digestive juices that are breaking down our food properly. And that leads to a leaky gut, which leads to all sorts of issues like autoimmune disease, but a really imbalanced gut microbiome. And so you may have symptoms like constipation or diarrhea or bloating or just like, why can't I think? Anyway, so digestively, when we're not digesting our foods, it impacts our gut microbiome. It can lead to autoimmunity, food sensitivities, and when our sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, so our gut microbiome is so critical to helping with hormone production, estrogen production. It's so tied to our hormones. And so those two things that are shut down when we're under chronic stress can lead to so many symptoms that are really, really common in women in this situation. So
You know what I just learned? I'm sure you know this. I just learned as I was studying the Alexander method of somatic, it's a somatic modality. And one of the things I'll have my clients do in a brain spot session or even just in a regular processing session is think between the ears and loosen, send signals to left and right jaw to loosen up, and really like release the tension in that jaw, because I learned that the jaw is connected to the gut. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. So the jaw also holds a lot of the shock residue. And so, like, if we can release that and then notice what comes through, the affect will come through. But I learned even on a deeper level, what you're talking about is that because it's connected to the gut, that if you hold all of this trauma and shock in your jaw and you don't release it and you don't process the affect afterwards, then that is also why you're going to have gut issues. Why autoimmune diseases do come from trauma, why we're tracing it back to unprocessed trauma. Like,
Mhm.
this just blows my mind when you think how holistically we really are. I know everything really is so connected. So
Yeah.
yeah, when you were talking about the gut, I just made me you reminded me of the jaw. And so just focusing, like something that like y'all can do, because I know you guys are like, tell me what to do right now.
Mhm.
Especially those like maybe can't go and get medical help, which we're going to talk about more of that in just a second too, Darce. But like, just start really focusing on your jaw and how tight it is. And a lot of times, a lot of my listeners, as you're becoming more aware of your emotions and you say it's showing up in my gut, loosen your jaw, and you'll start to notice a shift in your gut. Because again, if we keep it stuck here and it then stays stuck in our gut, like you're saying, you're going to have all these microbiome problems and hormonal problems as well. Fascinating to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I
so
love
cool.
it.
I'm glad you
I love
shared
it.
that.
I love it. I love it. Okay, maybe let's see. Where did my questions go? This is why I had them, just in case. Oh, okay. This would be a good one. So, what are some signs and symptoms that women can start looking out for to determine whether they're dealing with hormonal imbalances versus emotional or psychological trauma?
Okay. I would say, like, first of all, very first thing you need to start doing is tracking your cycle, because that is our clue that it's involved with hormones. So, what I tell my ladies is if you have migraines or even allergies are so connected with estrogen, but even and gut issues, whatever you're experiencing, depression, mood swings, breast tenderness, whatever your symptom is, start tracking your cycle and tracking your symptoms on a calendar. You can just write it on a paper. There's apps you can track your cycle with. But if you notice as you go through the months that these symptoms flare cyclically, meaning they're always coming up the week before your period or at a certain time every month, then it is most definitely hormone related, or at least exacerbated by the changing hormones,
Okay,
right?
that makes
If
sense.
it's something that you're experiencing off and on all the time, you can't tie it to anything, then it could very well be from the trauma instead. So,
Trigger
yeah,
related and
that would
stuff.
be an yeah. Yes.
I'm stuck on what you said. Allergies are connected to estrogen.
Yes.
What?
I know, it's so crazy, but so estrogen and mast cells, and histamine, that's our allergic response, right? An increase in allergies or in an allergic response or histamines can actually increase estrogen, and an increase in estrogen stimulates an increase in histamine. And so it's like this
Like a
cycle.
vicious cycle.
Yeah. So as you go through times of high estrogen, which is like mid-luteal phase, so like a week before your period, and you start experiencing increased allergy symptoms, it is related to estrogen.
Oh my gosh, you just put another little piece to my puzzle. That is amazing. Okay, the body's amazing.
It is.
No, that makes sense because I actually don't struggle with allergies, but every once, like, couple days a month, I'm like, "Am I getting allergies?" And I've been in Texas for 6 years, and everyone's just like, "Oh, just wait, you're gonna get the cedar allergy." And I haven't. I don't have, like, the sinus issues that so many people are, like, freaking out over that have lived in Texas. And so every month, I'll have, like, these little symptoms, and Scott will be like, "Oh, it's coming. This is the year that you're gonna get," and then it'll go away. It's tied to estrogen.
Yeah. Track it. See what days it comes on.
I am so going to. Okay, sorry. Woohoo! That was awesome. Light bulb. Makes sense. Okay. I really love that you suggested tracking. I love tracking moods, tracking emotions, tracking because the word that we've been using so much, cyclical. And even when you describe like the cyclical, the estrogen and allergies, like we are so cyclical. And when you know the pattern, it's like when I tell my women who are coming in raw trauma, like, okay, we need to look at the pattern. Oh, when you can't trust yourself or your partner, what do we trust? The pattern.
Mhm.
So when you know your pattern of your own body and what it does during the month, how long would you say, like a couple months? How often do you usually tell your women to track? Just one or
I would recommend tracking forever. Like it well, and you don't have
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
once you get used to doing it, like, you'll
Do you have a favorite app?
fine.
Do you have like a favorite app or something? I just put it in my and this is lame, but I just put it in my calendar.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've tried apps, and I'm not good
Have
at that.
you?
I actually,
Are you
um
like a pen and paper girl like me?
um, I'm so much of a pen and paper girl that I made this, like, I'm an author. But I
Awesome.
it's a tracker. It's a cycle tracker. But
Okay.
I because I love pen and paper and to be able to, like, see it all visually, you know?
Yes. Do you sell are those on your site too? Do you have
Yeah.
those?
Yeah, I think they're on there.
Okay. I'm putting your stuff on the show notes. And so, ladies, she just held up, if you're not watching on YouTube,
Oh,
she just
it's
held
pretty.
up a notebook, the female mir I love that you called it a miracle. It is such a miracle.
Our
Oh,
bodies are
did you get
incredible.
did you get told it was a curse too?
Oh, that culture will tell us that all the time, that it's
Right?
full and it's yeah,
I
I
heard that
the
all the
them.
time.
Yeah.
I don't like that. No, it is a gift. It is such a miracle. So anyway, she held up a book. I'll put the link in the show notes to her site because I know a lot of you are going to want to work with her. Go to her site. And if you want something pen to paper, then you can just get what she held up. But yeah,
Yeah.
tracking is so important. So important.
The thing that I love about tracking so much and, like, it's good to see the physical, okay, the day I started my period and then I'm having these symptoms or whatever, but there's so much beauty in our cycle, and we probably don't have time to go into it today, but just the energy that comes through the different phases of our cycle, it mirrors the seasons, and so,
Yeah.
just really briefly, like, our time of winter is when we're menstruating, when we're bleeding, and you think of winter, like, there's more darkness, there's, like it's time to be inward, turn inward, it's a huge time, like, of greater intuition and power and guidance that way.
Yep.
And also you think about the seasons, like, if you try and grow something in the winter, it's almost impossible, you have to work really hard to, like, create energy to grow something, right? And
Yep.
it's our time of lowest energy, and then we move into the spring after our bleed and our follicles are growing, and this is time like our energy is growing, 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 and you look outside and you can't stop the green from coming up, right? And so just looking at our energy, it's our time of most creativity and ready to start new projects. And ovulation is like this the biggest peak and where we are ready to be seen and heard and we're the most beautiful at that time. Like literally our lips are fuller, our skin is softer and then moving into the fall or leading toward back toward menstruation, our energy starts to lessen. It's like in the fall where we're gathering and preparing for the winter and we're finishing up projects. Literally, like when we think of our energy that way, we
Mhm.
also have more clarity and see the challenges of our lives, which people will be that's where the our culture comes in and it gives a bad rap for PMS. Like, oh, she's just PMSy, right? And but she's having more clarity and seeing the challenges in her life and instead it's being, like, knocked down upon, or our mood is way lower, our energy's way lower, and
What's
so that
wrong with you? What's
yeah.
wrong with me? Yeah. Have you heard of Camille Thompson?
No, I haven't.
She's a business coach, but she bases her whole business coaching around the female cycle.
That is so
It's
cool.
everything you're just saying.
Yeah.
And because
It's so
it's well, it's just again, it's just once you're aware of it and then you just apply it to like your life. I mean, whether you're working or not, right? It's when I'm in this week, so like the new moon or inner winter, like the winter time as you're saying, like that is actually where she talks about, this is where you set boundaries. This is where you ask for help. This is where you receive from others. This is where you retreat,
Mhm.
rest. And but what I love about this, and she goes through all the seasons like you just did, the week when you know your cycle and the week that you are in rest where you need to slow this. And this is what was the game changer for me in my life was with her work. Slow down. Cause I have a really hard time doing that, but I would judge myself
Mhm.
during that week where I was moving slower, but I was like, no, I shouldn't be moving slower. I need to move faster. And it was like the most, I was just the meanest to myself during that time
Yeah.
where really I needed to give myself more grace, more compassion, more time, and amp up that self care big time. So when you know your cycle and what week you're in, I think you use it to your advantage. And this is why I think the way our bodies are built as women is superpower. Like it is such a superpower when we use it to our advantage rather than believing a lot of this language and rhetoric that we've heard our whole life. Like it's a curse and you're too emotional. Oh, are you and excuse my French ladies, but oh, you're in bitch week. Like that is what we grew up hearing or maybe still hear. So what is your favorite thing and I know there's probably many, but what do you love telling women to shift? Like maybe a thought to shift around their cycle when they are on their period, when they maybe are feeling like they need to slow down but can't, or their emotions are really high and maybe I'm taking things too seriously or oh, I'm too emotional. What do you like to tell your clients to give them that shift in thinking about this?
I guess for my clients and for myself, my biggest advice is just like give yourself so much grace and pay attention to those signals. Like listen to your body. I get to this place now. It's so easy to recognize, but I'm just like, oh, I don't want to be around anyone right now. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, no, I don't want to go out and do that. Or I just want to like, oh yeah, like I'm not broken. Like this is normal. This is my body saying it's time to rest. It's time to have some space. It's okay. And in the past, I would have just been like, oh, something must be wrong. Like my husband must be acting out. Like, why do I feel like this? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
it brought fear before. And now it's just like my
Yes.
body is literally telling me to shut down. And the beauty about this time of winter, the time when we're menstruating, is it is our time of highest intuition. And as we are
Mm,
willing to
amen.
yeah, our brains, the way our brain communicates during that time of our cycle is so powerful. And if we choose to listen and choose to step away, like step into our red tent, step into our space and allow those like intuitive downloads to come in,
Mhm, mhm.
it will bring so much power to you, to your family. In fact, there were cultures in the past where they would send their ladies away to the red tent during this time of their cycle. And when they came back, their community expected them to come back with intuitive guidance for their people. Like they knew that the women were the ones receiving guidance for them. Like it's just so powerful and beautiful and how
Oh,
far we've
makes me wanna
come from that.
cry. I know, that makes me wanna cry. That is really, really beautiful. I believe that 100%. And now, like you're saying, when I have those heightened emotions and I know I'm on my cycle, that's when I do my most journaling because I wanna see what is actually coming up. And then that gives me like, I don't ignore any of it. Doesn't matter how mean it feels or off or whatever. I don't judge it. It's just like, okay. And then as I track it, if I have something that's coming up regularly, like say around my husband, then I'm like, okay, I need to have a conversation with him. This isn't
Mhm.
a one-off. I mean, the chewing too loud comes up. Everyone in my house just starts chewing way too loud that week, but that's just I'm gonna that one I just let go. But like other really important No, but my sentence senses are heightened.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized is like I smell better. Like not I smell better, but like I can smell things like more strongly. I hear things and I'm like, what is that? What is that? What is that? It's just, and people are like, you're crazy. Like, no, there's something outside. I can hear things better, which is why their chewing needs to stop during that week. But it happened. But like touch, I notice my touch, sense of touch. I don't want to be touched. Like, get off. Or if he's like scratching my arm, which usually feels great that week, oh my gosh, it's just so irritating. Get off. But I used to think like you're saying, I would make it mean like something is wrong with me or our relationship or my life. I'd be like, that's it. I'm calling it in. I'm done. Now I can give myself that grace and just be like, no, everything has just changed right now and nothing's wrong. I just need a break from people touching me.
Well, the cool part about that phase, especially the few days leading up to when your period starts, that's usually where women experience like those irritations. Like everything seems harder, everything seems bigger. And
Yes.
the best thing for that time is awareness, like write it down, even if it's like the chewing, right? Like
Yes.
write it down, be aware, but don't do anything about it yet. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
not the time to
Just
take
wait.
action.
Hmm.
Wait and move yourself into winter, into your menstruation, where then you can take what you saw and felt, take it into this time of higher intuition, and then from there decide what it is that needs to be done. Is this something that I need to take action on? Do I need to have a conversation about this?
Yeah.
And that's where the power comes. Being aware and then making conscious choices in a time where your mind is more stable.
Yes. It is such a good recommendation there because yeah, that's why chewing stays on my list and hasn't been addressed. Like you cannot make people stop chewing, Amie. I just gotta grin and bear it for those 2, 3 days and then I'm fine.
That's too funny.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I think I have time for one more question, but I really would love for you to just what is something that you would love for these women to know about their bodies, about their cycles, about their healing?
The first thing that comes to my mind is just patience, and we're in it for the long game. Like, it's not gonna be fixed tomorrow, and I guess that's just the theme of my life, like, wanting the quick fix,
Yeah.
wanting everything to be better all of a sudden, and I'm finally learning that it's okay to just, like, take one step at a time and find little bits of healing that I can take along with me on my journey, and as I do it imperfectly, that it doesn't mean I throw in the towel, that I can just get up and try again. And I think for women, for your listeners in particular, have so much grace and patience for yourself and find something that you can do, that you can try today, that you can practice. And that's whether that's a daily meditation practice or feeding yourself breakfast, just finding something that brings a measure of healing to you. And I mean, there's so many things that we could dive into to help send those signals of safety between, and I know you talk about it a lot, like somatic practices and other nervous system support practices, but then just feeding your body regularly. When we go, I know what it's like. I've been there. Like when we go to get to the point where we're skipping meals, delaying breakfast, just because we can't cope or we are too busy or whatever. That alone is it's not sending signals of safety, right? When you're not feeding your body or fueling your body, and it can lead to blood sugar disbalance, which then imbalance, which leads to more calling on your adrenals. So like when we're talking physically, like these sending those signals of safety, whether it's sleep, diet, feeding yourself, um, sitting down so your body feels like it's safe to digest your food, these kinds of practices, but just pick something you can start with today and don't try and do it all and be just really patient with yourself.
I love that. That's such a great reminder. And I love how you brought safety into the body that way, that it's so true. When you know what the body does, the signals the body sends when you don't eat, that makes so much sense. Creating safety by just feeding your body regularly, your body now knows to expect it and it's going to calm down, doesn't have to work so hard. And we work so hard as women in so many ways. What would you say? So, okay, I'm also really sensitive to women who are going through divorce. I know part of my story was I didn't get any financial support from my ex for huge chunks of time, if not ever. And trying to provide for yourself and find help and find resources can be really challenging. I know the amount of money that I spend in functional medicine, like it's ridiculous, honestly. And so I feel sometimes like I don't want to say go to a functional medicine doctor because it feels so disrespectful and unmindful of what women are going through when they have limited funds. So, what are your thoughts about like that and anything women can do when right now they just cannot get in? I mean, I have clients that can't even get into a doctor because they lost insurance when they got divorced. And Medicaid is it Medicaid or Medicare? I can never tell the difference.
Well, Medicare's when you're like
Government,
over 65, and yeah, I don't know exactly what they would
I
be.
can't ever remember, but government health insurance, which I was on for a while, and it wasn't the best. So, what can they do when they don't have access to help right now professionally?
Yeah. Well, that is that's so I get the whole functional medicine thing. It's and for the most cases, it's not covered by insurance, and my work isn't either. But there's so many there's so much low-hanging fruit, so many free things that they can start today. I just touched on some of them, and working with me one-on-one isn't cheap either because it's very intensive work. I spend 8 to 10 hours a month on one client, and so
Yeah.
it gets expensive, but I'll tell you what my solution is, and then if you want, we can go into some more, like, you know, actual applicable things that they can start today, but I was creating this program for women in perimenopause and looking at it from a root cause approach, and I was gonna present it as and sell it as a course, like an 8-week course, come and work through it, and it would be a few $100s and then we'd be done, like 8 weeks, and we're done. And just going back to that message that I had before of just, like, being in it for the long game and our hormones, like, if it takes 10 years to get through perimenopause, like, things are always gonna be shifting and changing, and as we move from one phase to the next, and so I just felt so inspired to change what I was doing and do it as a membership instead, where these women have access to the course, have access to me through live coaching calls, and support as a community. Maybe they're not getting obviously, it'd be more if they were getting, like, individualized functional lab testing. That just is what it is because it costs what it costs. There's no way to control that.
Right.
But doing the foundational lifestyle supportive stuff and getting that functional medicine approach and support, that's my mission with this group that I've created. And it's very affordable. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a monthly membership that's very cheap, but that's what I felt inspired to provide because functional medicine is very cost prohibitive for sure.
Yeah, it really is. Would you say just starting with blood work would would be a great place to start? Like, if they were to do a minimal investment, like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to go down the route of lab work, I usually do blood work on everyone that is choosing, and it depends on symptoms. If they're having a ton of guts and symptoms, like a stool test, if they had to choose one or the other, a stool test might be more important, but and same with like a Dutch test for their adrenals or hormones. But a blood work can be very foundational, but I will say, like, without doing any testing, there's so much lifestyle,
Yeah.
diet that can be done
Mhm.
and find massive improvements without going down the route of testing, if that's what their budget allows. And so
Yeah.
that the group offers, but it's obviously, if you have the means, I really believe in testing, but I
Mhm.
know what can happen through just
I
the
believe
mindset.
in testing. That's been what has shifted everything for me the last 6 months is just deeper testing. did a neurobiological psych panel, like genetics,
Wow.
more about my genetics. And I'm like realizing that I don't actually have genes to support some of the symptoms that I am experiencing. Like, no wonder why my PTSD symptoms have been exacerbated more than normal people. Or, oh my gosh, it makes sense why these medications weren't working or why this particular supplement was giving me an adverse reaction. Like, it just put so many pieces of the puzzle together for me.
Mhm.
And so I'm with you on that. I think that if you do have funds to invest in yourself, it would be this. I mean, I've just committed to it, like you said, to my life to it, because it is how I take care of me. And there is no arrival. I mean, my clients hear me say that all the time. They hate it, but they're gonna
I remember
hate.
that.
I remember hating that. But
Yeah.
like there's no arrival in this either, as we are always developing, even as women, in our phases and our cycles and throughout our life, through perimenopause, menopause, pose, like it's all such different phases in our life. And I think just meeting ourselves where we're at in each of those phases, like you said, creating safety. I love the little things that you gave. Any more thoughts, tips, tricks that you want these women to know? I want you to be able to like we click off and like, oh, I said everything that I wanted to tell them.
I know that, yeah, that would take hours. Just, I think back to if we're talking about physical things, let's talk about diet. Sorry about that. Feeling your body again. And there's so much hype out there about like intermittent fasting, keto, low carb. I will tell you as women, especially in this phase and age of your life, that is going to send signals of stress to your body. So I do not recommend like intermittent fasting or closing down your eating window. I do not recommend going low carb for the purpose of good hormonal production and function. Women that have gone through menopause and past, they do better with that kind of stuff because they more mimic a man's hormonal profile, right? So it's and
Mhm.
to the research been done on men. So
Hmm.
just there may be times later when you feel more ready for something like that, but I just say again, like so much grace for your body and just focusing on uh, from a dietary approach, protein, which can be really hard for us women, but it's so critical to support all the breakdown that's happening from the adrenal stress response. Protein helps to rebuild. And as we're going through a healing time, we need more protein than we would need if
Mhm.
we're just
Makes sense.
normal. And so healing diet looks different than just a normal diet that we maybe were fine on before. But right now, your body needs more nutrition. It needs the colorful foods, and I get it. It's like right now it's hard to focus on what you're eating. It's hard to make that a priority. But as you do, if you can, it will give you more capacity to handle the other things that you're going through. So,
Bingo.
yeah.
I literally a beautiful place to stop because that's just such the truth bomb drop mic right there. When you do these little things that lay the foundation, really, then you have more capacity to handle the big things.
I love that.
So thank you so much. I could talk to you forever, but I have a brain spot session.
Yeah.
But I really do appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And ladies, show notes. You'll find out more about Darcy. And if you're wanting to connect with her, head over there. What's your website name? I just want to say it too.
It's sitwithmefn.com. So sit with me functional nutrition, but the FN. Because
Love it.
I love about that. We need to like sit down, hear your story. Find that's the way to healing is like get it all out there, take time to be seen, be heard, and be well.
I love it. Beautiful. Thank you, lady.
Thank you.